focus today is on the right channels. And we have already introduced ourselves to most of you, but for those of you that don't know us, Better Faster Growth is a specialist sales and marketing effectiveness advisor. And we work with private equity and their portfolio companies and other organizations to accelerate growth. We'll introduce ourselves very briefly. So I'm Andy, and background in travel industry and then general management consulting, and then narrowed my focus to sales and marketing effectiveness, and have supported many of you on this call today, and look forward to supporting others. Wayne?
Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone. Wayne Tessier. I think I've met most of you, but I joined BFG a few years ago, and prior to that, most of my career has been in commercial leadership. Half of that with Mars Inc., working mainly on their pet food brands, and then on the second half with private equity-backed businesses, both in food service and in coffee service, the latter of which was where I met Andy, and the rest is history, as they say.
And I'm Marek Izmailovic, so my background is mostly consulting, Carney's, Ellis Associates, and commercial effectiveness work. But also, I've been on the ground in 2 tech startups. One was a spin-off from our work in Cambridge. Another one was a spin-off from Carney, which received VC and PE backing. So that's those sort of companies very much in our focus.
And if you could skip a couple of slides, please, Marek. So just for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're running a series of 13 sales and marketing effectiveness webinars, the right channels today. Next week, we're focusing on how to figure out and promote and sell the right products and services for your customers. And there's a full agenda or schedule of events on our website at betterfastergrowth.com/events. So please put Friday in your diary. And I've shared with most of you on this call previously, but I'll do so for those that are joining for the first time, the fact that we look at sales and marketing effectiveness very holistically, 12 different dimensions we assess against, and then for each of these 12, we have a set of tools and approaches to help organizations raise their game. And the main point I want to make here is that we deliberately look at sales and marketing effectiveness very holistically. So in contrast, when you ask somebody, what does sales effectiveness mean to you? Often they'll say, well, it's about the chatter of my reps. We would counter that that's really important. However, it's just one aspect of competencies, which in turn is just one element of sales and marketing effectiveness, because they could be brilliant, but if you're not incentivizing them or performance managing them appropriately, you're not going to be a highly effective sales team. Marek, if you could move on. So each of these dimensions can make a tangible difference. Not all of them by themselves. Some of them, like pricing, you can pull the pricing lever and by itself it can make a difference. Although even with pricing, again, incentives and other dimensions come into play. We're going to talk today about channels where you can make a tangible difference. Again, though, most often not in complete isolation from the other dimensions.
Great, thanks, Andy. So before we get stuck into too much of the content, just like to ask a question here, and please put any comments into the chat here, into the Zoom chat, or there's not that many of us, so take yourself off mute we welcome your opinions here. So, question, first one: what sales channel strategy right for your business and markets? A, field sales only, so you talk about reps, account managers. They are different, so they could be different as appropriate to your business. Maybe outsourcing to partners such as distributors, or a mix field sales, telesales, e-commerce. So welcome your thoughts on this. Any comments coming through?
Excuse me. I think
Graham? A mix. Yeah. Mike, a field sales only. Thank you. So reps and account managers. Andrew, I think it was you.
I think from our perspective, then C is very much. I mean, in terms of A, yeah, absolutely. B, partners and distributors. Distributors, from our perspective, we have no partner. Well, we do have some partners. That's not true. So we are an OEM for some suppliers, but we have no distribution outlets. But we do mix field sales with telesales and a bit of e-commerce too.
Okay.
And it's Stuart here. I would say C for us as well in terms of our business and our approach. It's C.
Okay. And who said A only?
Well, that was Mike.
I guess for understandable reasons. Got a very specialist service, don't you, Mike?
Correct. Yes, I'm not quite sure my vote counts as a full vote.
I guess the message here is there's no one size fits all, and what we're going to be doing is going through a lot of these and thinking about what's appropriate and how to think about these things. So, okay, well, thank you very much for that. Next one. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you understand your channel costs and effectiveness? And think about things like your customer value, conversion rates. You've got rep costs, could be other costs, marketing spend. So to what extent do you look at this, and how much do you think you understand the costs?
Hi, it's Stuart here.
Sorry, go ahead, Stuart.
Sorry, it's we're just configuring and refreshing our CRM system. So I mean, it's critical in understanding what our channel costs are, etc., and our conversion rates. So for me at the moment, I don't have enough information, but that's because of the source that we have at the moment isn't configured and optimized yet. But I think knowing all of those are incredibly important, so that you can make informed decisions on where you're going to allocate your budget moving forward.
Absolutely. And Graham was saying five at best. Do you want to elaborate on that, Graham? You're on mute.
Yeah. If you can hear me. I think you can hear me. 5 at best. Yeah. We've got trying to combine what you spend on marketing to partners, dealers, dealer commission, plus a direct sales force, desk-based sales force. We've got a lot of streams, and I'm not sure we've got a real grip on where we get the best return per pound, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah.
And Andrew says that he agrees with Graham, 5 at best, and that's basically what we see typically as we consult across organizations, and hence the purpose of this webinar, really, because most organizations don't have a great handle on the cost of sales by channel.
And I would just build on that. That sometimes it's not about having the answer to it, but it's knowing that is a question in itself, and knowing that as an organization, that those questions need to be answered. I think that's the key thing.
Great. Yeah, even those companies or individuals who have one channel, for example, you've just got face-to-face, for example, there are more costs to that than people often think in terms of, sales collateral, CRM systems, things like that support. Whereas if you start thinking about distributors, that opens up all sorts of different degrees of freedom. And of course, if you've got lots of different channels to optimize across, we'll get to a lot of this later. Thank you very much for providing the context in your situations. So just in general, right? At a high level, when we talk about channels, we're talking about field sales. So, reps, account managers, there's a whole spectrum between, reps and account managers in terms of hunting and farming. And the point just made as well there is that, there's a lot of things that support field sales. It's not just the person, right? Inside sales, telesales, emails, onshore, offshore, online, e-commerce platforms, your own, others, how many, marketing, pay-per-click, search engine optimization. There's a lot of factors in here to think about, and partners, exactly what kind of model, what kind of contracts, are they distributor, wholesale, agent, things like that. So we're working within this kind of context here, and we're going to try and look at across what things to think about and what's appropriate for customers.
Thanks, Marek. So one way to think about it is the classic sort of approach of, should we look at it from a quantitative point of view? So I guess as many numbers, as many pieces of data as we can fit in as possible, ideally commercial. Or is it more qualitative? Is it more touchy-feely? It might even be subjective. And if we think about a sort of a public example, if you will, in a moment, we've got, we might say for an organization that, well, I need to focus on, absolutely channel cost versus customer value. And let's take an example, if you can just share the one here. So let's think about Richer Sounds. I don't know if any of you have ever shopped in Richer Sounds. I'm sure I should point out at this stage, other retailers are available, but you may have shopped in one of their outlets or shopped online. And I guess, if I was to look at Richer Sounds, and I have had the benefit of shopping there, they could look at it from a purely quantitative point of view and think, well, we're up against Amazon, we're up against some other big players. We probably should look at, could we go online? We need to be able to simplify, take cost out, so therefore let's just go online and be able to compete, but take cost out of our organization to do so. So it's all about the cost of that channel. And I guess the amount of value that it can offer, which, to a degree it still does. But I think for Richer Sounds, if anyone has shopped there, and certainly my experience has been the customer experience. And whilst I'm not saying for one moment that customer experience can't be good online, I think, a consumer example sometimes is more easy to relate to. And Richer Sounds, I mean, their in-store experience is phenomenal. You go in probably wanting to buy a TV, I would guess half the size of the one this gentleman here is pointing to, and you probably walk out with one twice the size of the one that this gentleman here is pointing to. I think, but what that's sort of born out of is a fantastic knowledge and experience. And all joking aside, it's not actually a pushy sale. And I think therefore what they've got to bring into it is how true is the customer experience to their brand, and how much can they offer if they go for a very different channel, a very lean or different channel like online or e-commerce. And so they've plumbed for a mix, but actually they're very, very happy to retain the kind of store and high street environment. And then there's a middle ground. If we look at something like competitor benchmarking, that's probably going to be a mix of quantitative and qualitative, some more subjective elements. And if we look at the upper end of the quadrant on quantitative, we've got things like, channel performance, KPIs, technology integration, channel conflicts and collaborations, even digital automation. So these are some considerations to think about. And then somewhere in very much the qualitative camp, but probably lower down in quantitative, things like the customer buying journey, partner relationship management, which is probably not as heavily bound in KPIs but still is a factor. I think the point to make is all of these things are important to build in to a decision about where to play, not in isolation, but potentially in combination. Thanks, Mark.
And we'll be touching on a few of these. And the first one I just wanted to we'll look at in a second is the customer buying journey. And then we'll be looking at choosing the right sales strategy, right sales channels. And then, as we touched on earlier, looking at calculating the cost of the channels and things to look at there. So first of all, the customer buying journey. And I mean, what I've got here are a bunch of stages of a buying journey. It could be consumer, it could be B2B. With B2B, obviously, it's more people are involved. There are decision makers, there are purchasers. They may not be exactly the same person. And timescales may be longer depending on what you're trying to sell. But just in general terms, at some point, someone is becoming aware of a need, and they're becoming aware that there is a solution to that need out there, not necessarily know exactly what it is. They're considering options, they are evaluating them, they're making decision. Then there's a step between decision and purchase. Could be the same sort at the same time, but not necessarily. And then post-purchase retention, not talking about us retaining them here. I'm talking about the customer retaining us. Yes, look at this from the customer point of view. And there are many, many, many different buying journeys. I'm just illustrating one here, which has got many, many channels, many touch points. So maybe they got awareness online. Maybe they saw a white paper, a product brochure. Maybe they were at a trade show and they got a link or something like that. Maybe it stimulated them to call up the company. They reached telesales. Telesales qualified them, passed them on to a salesperson who spoke to them, either went out, got in the car and drove to them, or called them up. But something a bit more specialized now. And then actually they realized, for evaluation, they need to get even more specialized. Someone could really talk about the product. So there's another handover here, or someone else, not necessarily a handover, but someone else is getting involved. Might need to get procurement on the case, right? Dot the I's, cross the T's. Once they bought, maybe it's in the scope of account management, then training, then customer support, right? Again, one example, one illustrative example, but it just goes to show there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different touch points with the customer. And, it could be one touch point. It could be two. It could be one channel. It could be many. One thing to consider, though, is how does the customer perceive your company? So, okay, there's 8 different channels to touch the customer. Customers generally not really interested in that. They're just seeing you as a company. So they want a seamless experience. So one thing to consider is omnichannel. And it's a word that's bandied around. People talk about multi-channel, they talk about omnichannel. What we're really talking about here is how are we touching the customer through different channels? And what is the experience? Can the customer really see you as one brand? And I guess there's a question to the group here is, how easy do you think you are to buy from? Honestly, I welcome your thoughts now.
Maybe score it in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10. If you were in one of your customers' shoes today, what would you say? From cold to sold, or even from knowing you to, a retain or a repeat sale? How easy would you say?
Graham's saying 6 or 7.
Yeah. Thanks, Graham.
Bruno's an 8.
Bruno, 8. Stuart, 8. Thanks, Stuart. Andrew, 8. Any others?
Would anyone like to volunteer why they scored themselves in that way?
I'm thinking what BFG would assess ourselves as we're asking that as well, Marek. Andrew, go for it.
I think from our perspective, I mean, as a manufacturing business, we're very B2B. We do very little or no B2C, and it's very much about a consultative sell. It's engagement, it's knowledge, and obviously the I guess the scenario you brought to the screen a couple of minutes ago with the obviously the retail experience. You know, I look at people like John Lewis, and I think John Lewis, you know, I would buy TVs and hi-fi, and that's from John Lewis simply because of the similar sort of reason. So one is you've got the product, second you've got the knowledge, the know-how, and you get the service. I think like with us here in manufacturing, I'd like to think that our experience is very similar. We get a lot of repeat customers. So, you know, you look at our monthly sales order intake, and you may have from like £2.5–3 million worth of orders into the business, but actually buying customers is probably split across 22 or 23, 24 customers. So actually, there's a lot of repetition in terms of people coming back to us. So I think the journey, I hope, yes, we can always do better, and yes, communication-wise and that sort of thing, we can always do better. But I'd like to think that, you know, from a sales perspective, we're relatively easy to engage with. But it's about people that have knowledge and skills and have the ability to work with customers.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.
I work a lot with the pharmaceutical industry, and you know, it's a very regulated market, and if, you know, their buying journeys are very, very different. It's drugs for customers, and the customers are patients, and it's a slightly different stakes to buying a mobile phone necessarily. But what they do is they invest a huge amount in various aspects of Salesforce effectiveness, and over there's a lot of customer handoff. So a rep comes in, and they can only speak about a certain aspect. They can speak about promoting the product. If the conversation goes beyond that, they go, sorry, can't speak about it anymore. I need to bring a medic in. That medic has their own role. Finance, no, okay, you need to bring a market access colleague in. And the criticism that you get from doctors and anyone else is, I want to speak to your company. I don't really care what your internal setup is, your internal functions are, right? You appear to be working in silos, very much handing things over, and not necessarily handing over very much information. So my experience as a doctor is that I'm often repeating myself and having conversations with lots of different people. In your mind, you've got it all sorted. You've got this person does this person does this, person does that. And, you know, that's not necessarily the way the customer perceives you, even if it's, you know, very, very clear in your mind. And I realize, you know, that's one very specific industry example. But I've seen silos in a lot of industries. And some other elements here, you know, other things that pharma invests a lot in is closed loop marketing. So this is about collecting information about your customers, and there's lots of different ways of doing that. Obviously, if you've got websites, people sign into things, you know, Google Analytics, all this kind of thing. But with this one in particular, rather than turning up with a brochure in the olden days, they turn up with an iPad, and you track, you know, which bits of the presentation doctors are spending time on, are most interested in, you know, which bit of data, which, you know, things like that. And that's data, and that all gets fed back. You know, and then it can feed in all sorts of algorithms like next best action and all this kind of stuff. So I guess, you know, it may be a face-to-face channel, but it brings in a lot of different factors. And to enable that, you need, you know, analytics, you need your CRM systems, you need all the other collection of data. And all this might seem quite complicated, but when it's set up, the whole idea of it is it just becomes, it creates a better experience for the customer, much more personalized, tailored. You're using more information, plus you're collecting a lot more information on this as well. And every industry does this differently, right? But ultimately, you know, you're trying to, you know, unify your approach, tailor it to the customer, you know, in as much as you can, and ultimately, you know, cost efficiency. Don't know if anyone has any other sort of examples or thoughts on that. Great. I will move on here. To Andy.
Yeah, no, thank you, Marek. So when thinking about the right channel strategy, goes without saying that your customer preference is have to come first. And those are often not one or another, but they're a combination. And again, if we think about retail, we think about you know, a John Lewis, you've not only got the store, you've not only got the online, but you've also got the click and collect. And it's really about putting yourselves in the shoes of your customer and thinking that they may want one thing one day, another the next, or they may want a combination. So again, it's back to this omni-channel perspective. The next to think about is product complexity. So we recently worked with a manufacturer of batteries and inverters for solar energy. And whilst that is a you know, relatively straightforward commodity, anyone buying one of those also does so in conjunction with, or generally does so in conjunction with buying solar panels. And that's where it gets far more tricky, because there you need installers. Installers tend to buy through distributors, and suddenly you have quite a complex sales channel. But that's the way it has to work, given the complexity of the product. Geography comes into play. So here, it may be that you're experimenting with new markets. You don't want to hire an expensive field sales force to get your foot in the door, or even it may not be possible to do so easily without the help of distributors, partners on the ground who have got the connections. There may be legal implications. If you take pharma again, every country has its own set of regulations, and that adds a layer of complexity. Taking into account your costs again, and do I invest with relatively high fixed costs in a field sales force, or do I go down a potentially longer term, less profitable route of distributors and partners, but keeping the costs mostly variable? And then how easy is it to scale? So with a website, I can scale exponentially very easily. Much more difficult to replicate that with field sales, and telesales is somewhere in the middle. So again, I think the main point of this slide is just that there are many different factors to consider when you're thinking about your sales channel strategy, and whilst the customer is the most important to start with, you can't look at the customer in isolation.
Thanks, Andy. And it's also thinking about the kind of products that we're sort of selling as well, and not necessarily always developing a brand new product, but sometimes even the way that we want to position it. So if we think about almost a complexity of the sale that might go behind that product, we then need to consider also the account size and the sort of strategic importance. So the size and the importance of the accounts as well. So take it again, another sort of simple example. You know, if we were supplying into like the automotive industry, for example, and this is a simple component, a single component, you might say, or there are a bunch of these. We've chosen a Bosch spark plug just as one example. You know, that might throw up a very, very different approach, where, you know, it could be much more easily and cost effectively sold. You know, it's a base product. Could be relatively commoditized. It may suit all accounts, actually. We probably want to make the sale of that, given that it might be more commoditized and easy to price compare, for example. We might want to make the cost behind selling that as lean as possible. Whereas if we change the way that we position the product offer, you know, it may be that we're actually then supplying that as part of a package. And in order to do that, we then need to think about lots of different things. Does that still apply then to retail and online? It may not, and for good reason. It may be too difficult. It may be logistically difficult to move. It may be it has complexity in the pricing structure of it. It may be that we don't then go through indirect or partners because actually it's almost too complex for them. Of course, sometimes, and for example, we've worked in oil and gas where there are package companies whose job is to consolidate and is to amass these. So in that case, it would be relevant. But it may be that if such a partner or consolidator doesn't exist and we're now selling a package as opposed to a single item, we may need to think about a much more solution sale focus, more of a direct sale, and we may want to engage then more in a field sales type of capability, and managing our more complex accounts in that way. Of course, I suppose the advantage is if we're doing that, there's an ability to get more sticky with the customer. It might be less easy to draw single line price comparisons to competitors, and that's an advantage, but it still has to be then sold and positioned and understood in the right way, I guess, from a value proposition point of view. So two things there really to consider. One is around the sort of nature of the accounts that we're selling to, size and strategic importance, and secondly, the complexity of the sale. And it may be naturally complex already, or it may be that we want to choose to make it complex because then it draws less price comparison and makes it a more sticky product. So that's that one. Back over to you, I think, Marek.
Thank you. Okay, so we mentioned earlier about calculating the cost of channels. Just like to throw a few cost metrics at you. I don't think this will be entirely exhaustive, but it's things to think about. And I mean, again, from a customer-centric point of view, the god, the Zeus, the Odin of metrics is customer satisfaction, right? Net promoter scores and various other ways of collecting that. Happy customers are repeat customers. So, customer retention is a good metric. Why are they leaving or why are they staying? But okay, above and beyond that, let's think about something more to do with the costs. Right. So here's a bunch, right? Cost to serve. So, it's something, cost to serve is something that comes up a lot in manufacturing, supply chain, and things like that. I mean, I've done a bunch of these things. I did one for Cadbury's where we looked at their assortments, everything, every cost attribution. What we did was we trimmed out some of their SKUs, and then the data allowed us to optimize the supply chain and make some of their stuff more profitable. I think companies are very used to doing these kind of analyses within that space, within a manufacturing production space. Maybe a bit less so around sales channels. You just go out there, you sell, you've got an idea of where customers are coming in, you kind of get on with it. But cost of service, you've got the cost of your, let's just think face to face, your salesperson, their travel, any materials that they take with them. Don't forget the CRM system that's sitting at home, but someone's paid for that CRM system, and someone's looking after it, right? So there's stuff going. Once you start costing it up, there are quite a few of these sort of secondary costs. Customer acquisition costs, right? Take a single customer, look at their journey. How much should we spend at each stage? How much do we allocate from our, overall our cost of our person, our cost of our CRM, our cost of our materials? So how much that individual customer really costs to acquire? Be interesting how much they spend as well compared to how much you spent on them. Then it leads you on to customer lifetime value. Again, how much did that person contribute to your P&L versus how much did you spend on them? And then more broadly, sales efficiency. So not just about the one customer. How much does your channel overall cost versus the revenue it brings in? Again, more broadly, return on investment. Okay, if you put in a telesales office somewhere, it's unlikely that you're going to get your money back on that within a few months. But when are you getting your money back on it, right? What's that investment? How's that spread over time? Some things you can switch on and off much more easily, and have a much more direct effect. Other things are an investment. Conversion rates. So we mentioned these. How many prospects are coming into your channel? You get 100 prospects into your website, you get one customer at the end of it. Is that bad? Might be okay, actually. It's a fixed cost. If you've got 100 prospects coming into a rep and you get one bit of business out of it, maybe that's not quite so effective. So all of these things are not being done for the sake of doing the calculations. They're actually there to inform you, to think about, do you have the right channels? How are they set up? And what levers can you pull to become more profitable? Finally, sales cycle length. Time is money, is opportunity cost. Some things naturally have a long sales cycle, some things don't. How long is yours? How variable is it? So again, I think last time we emphasized the paralysis by analysis, and where's the most appropriate pitch it is. We're not saying that you have to consistently analyze all of this, and some things are much more difficult to do depending on the data you have and things like that. If you don't look at it though, what can you do about it? I think Andy's going to provide us with an interesting example here. If you take yourself off mute, Andy.
I won't go into the detail of this, but we regularly see that our clients don't measure the cost of sales. They do a very good job of understanding the gross margin, the cost of goods sold. But then when it comes to all of the costs around your sales staff, and that includes their travel, which might be in quite a considerable cost if they're field based. It includes systems, it includes marketing material, it includes maybe customer service support, etc. They don't do a good job of measuring, and they don't do a good job of measuring against alternatives. We put one up here of some of your sales going through a distributor. What you really want to do is drill down by channel, and really understand what is the true cost impact here. And typically our clients are very surprised when we share with them that one channel is far more expensive or less expensive than they had anticipated. So this is a very simple example, but we would encourage you to really drill down and understand the true cost of selling to a customer or a prospect.
So finally, and we bring this up each time on the webinars, but we do the BFG grade and we do assess companies in other ways as well. So channels, again, like last time, the right customers and prospects, channels generally scores pretty low. And if you want to dig a little bit into that, the things that it scores lowest on are being able to manage your customers to the right channels, whether it's face-to-face, online, telesales, the agility to be able to do that and in an informed manner, and also understanding competitors. Interestingly, channels also correlates quite well with pricing. So if pricing is good, people often assess themselves also being good with channels, and if their channels are, they're not going for the right channels, often the pricing. It's an interesting one. I mean, there's an analytical approach to both, but also it's very sort of at the coalface in some way. So but that's also one to consider, the interrelation between those. And again, the people who've been on his webinars will have seen this, but for people who are new, the context of this BFG grade is we provide a no obligation free survey. It's a self-assessment survey. It's about 60 questions, takes about 20 minutes. And then you'll get a red, amber, green score, and it's out of 4 for all of these. And then we're very happy to have a phone call with you, 45 minutes or so, where we'll just go through your answers and get your perspectives, and we'll create a report with some simple observations and a few initial recommendations. And like I said, we're very happy to do this for your business. What we find really, really helpful and effective, actually, is if we actually get different people from the same company to fill in the survey. So the one on the side here is the CEO, CTO, finance director, a whole bunch of sales managers, sales directors. And obviously they're self-assessing the same company, right, that they work for, but they're coming up with different scores. So that's a great start of the conversation. Why are different parts of your business looking at it in a different way and thinking that certain things are effective and others aren't, but from different point of view? We've done this many times in companies. This is always fun. So very welcome to do this. Thank you very much. We welcome any final comments you have, but that's it for channels for today. Next week it is at 1 o'clock. As usual, we're going through products and services. So the decision making around choice of products and services, cross-sell opportunities, and making sure that the products that are developed also communicated appropriately to customers. Are there any final thoughts from anyone? Otherwise, we'll close this out. Or questions?
Yeah, please feel free, in the remaining minute or two that we have, any questions, observations, really appreciated. Did what we say resonate for your business as a potential opportunity to think about channels a bit differently, or are you already thinking about them in absolutely the right way?
I remember there were some 6 out of 10s and some 8 out of 10s earlier.
It definitely resonates. Yeah, some food for thought there. The cost of the channels is really interesting, right? And where you get that return from. Now have a good think about that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's an important area to do some work on.
I mean, very happy to take this offline as well, have a discussion if you want to throw around a few ideas.
No, it's all good though.
So just in closing then, please put Friday at 1 in the diary if it isn't already. These sessions are taking place each Friday through December the 13th. Feel free to ask us for the link to the BFG grade sales effectiveness assessment. Again, as Marek said, there's no obligation to you, but those who have taken it have found it really revealing. And then by all means, schedule a call with us anytime to suit you if there's anything that we can discuss with you or support you on. Thank you so much, and wishing you a great rest of afternoon and weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.